to Meany Hall for the Performing Arts on the campus of the University of Washington and the 1999 University of Washington Freshman Convocation. The Convocation is a celebration in honor of freshmen and their families, welcoming them to the campus community. This marks the 16th such ceremony since the tradition was revived in 1984. It is not generally known that the university held convocations from the 1920s through the 1950s. Records in the university archives do not indicate when or why the earlier convocations were discontinued, but until its revival in 1984, it was at least 20 years since one had been held. Speakers for today's event include University Marshal and Associate Professor of Philosophy Ronald M. Moore, President Richard L. McCormick, Provost Lee L. Huntsman, and the President of the Associated Students of the University, Ryan D. Biava. The keynote speaker is Dr. Colleen J. McElroy, Professor of English and Creative Writing. The title of her convocation address is, What If? Again, welcome to the 1999 University of Washington Freshman Convocation.
The 1999 University of Washington Freshman Convocation will be opened with the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by Mr. Lincoln Johnson, accompanied by the University Wind Ensemble, conducted by Professor Timothy Saltzman of the School of Music. The audience will please rise and is invited to join with Mr. Johnson in the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Welcome to Meany Hall for the Performing Arts and the 1999 University of Washington Freshman Convocation. I'm Ronald Moore, the University Marshal. In my regular job, I teach in the philosophy department. But as University Marshal, I have two very important ritual responsibilities at convocation and commencement ceremonies. First, I lead in the academic procession and make sure that the provost and deans don't get lost. And second, as you will no doubt have noticed, I carry the mace. The mace is an ancient symbol of authority that reminds us that universities are custodians both of enduring traditions of learning and of the power they bestow on those who come to learn. It is also a reminder that the learning process has not always been comfortable and easy. In the early universities in Europe, students entered into such vigorous debates with their instructors that their raucous discussions often spilled out of the classroom into nearby coffee shops and taverns. And that is why there had to be a mace. The marshal was called upon to clobber parties who got out of hand. Now, we haven't had to resort to this sort of violent expedient at the University of Washington, although they did at Yale a few years ago. At their commencement, a student seized the microphone to make an unscheduled political announcement, and the University Marshal stopped him cold with a nifty blow of the mace. A few years ago, I thought I was going to be facing something similar when a student pushed me away from the mic at our commencement, but all he wanted to do was to make a grand public proposal to his girlfriend, and thank God she accepted. There is a serious point, actually, behind my remarks on the history of the mace. I want to draw your attention to the fact that in entering this university, you are at the same time entering a continuous stream of accumulated learning that connects us with the greatest accomplishments of the past, the greatest writing, music, art, science, philosophy, in all times and all cultures. It is the nature of the university to gather and preserve the best ideas mankind has hit upon, not to present them as sterile exhibits in some stuffy museum of the mind, but rather to make these ideas a solid foundation from which new ideas can make worthwhile departures. It is the university's way of being liberal to be conservative. We bring together all we have gained from experiment, composition, analysis, invention, and proof to free our futures by ensuring they develop out of knowledge of our pasts. The mace and these medieval gowns we wear on occasions such as these are symbolic reminders of the university's special way of uniting where we are now with what has brought us here. The wonderful thing that you, students, will soon discover is that whereas up to now you've looked at this historical flow of ideas from the riverbank, as it were, you will now be immersed in it. Up to now you have read about science, art, psychology, engineering, and so on. Now you will become scientists, artists, psychologists, engineers, and so on. And the great thinkers of the past will no longer be people you admire from afar. They will become your partners. A convocation is, as those of you who recall your high school Latin may remember, a calling together. Today, we call together our incoming freshmen and their families so that we may celebrate with you the beginning of university education and to welcome you all to membership in our campus community. This is the 16th such ceremony since the tradition was revived in 1984 after a 20-year hiatus. By calling all of us, students, faculty, families, and friends together in this place, we are underscoring a point of cooperation and mutual commitment. You are all now becoming members of the University of Washington family. And like family members everywhere, we will be sharing our concerns, our affections, our aspirations, and our belief in the betterment of future generations through learning for a long, long time. Unfortunately, President McCormick is ill today and regrets that he's not going to be able to be with us at this ceremony. So I want to introduce now the man who will preside over our ceremony, the Provost of the University of Washington, Dr. Lee Huntsman.
On behalf of President McCormick, and indeed on behalf of all the faculty, staff, and students of the University of Washington, of this great university, welcome. You who are coming as students are coming to a university that's big, it's bustling, it's crackling with energy and ideas. You're joining a university that is dedicated to core values, traditional values, much as Professor Moore has described them. Core values of learning and discovery. But you're also coming to a university that's changing. It's changing rapidly. That will change while you're here. That will change because you're here. So as you sort through the initial confusion that's always part of coming to a new place, I hope you'll see that this is a university with a richness of opportunity. Opportunities to advance both your academic interests and your personal life. You will certainly be challenged, and you will certainly be blessed by being here, and particularly so by the remarkable people that you will encounter in this place. People with a variety of backgrounds, a variety of talents, and a variety of perspectives. You are joining a community that's dedicated to the highest values of learning and of service to society. But in addition to finding much here, you students are bringing much as well. You're part of one of the largest freshman classes, and you're a smart bunch. The average GPA of the entering freshman class is somewhere north of 3.6. But you're bringing a lot more than accomplishment. You're bringing fresh minds, fresh questions, fresh ideas. So in a very real sense, you who are coming as students to join this community are coming to join the continuing renewal of a great university. And because you are, and because we are part of that adventure on your part, and because we are the beneficiaries of what you bring, we are absolutely delighted to have you here. It's my privilege now to introduce to you the people on the platform, people who represent a wide variety of contributions to this great university. I will try to introduce them by groups and ask you to hold your applause until each group has been introduced. First, the regents of the University of Washington. This university is owned by the citizens of the state of Washington and led by the regents on the citizens' behalf. These are men and women chosen by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, who serve, bringing wisdom and insight without pay to this great institution. They are the president of the Board of Regents, Regent William H. Gates, the vice president of the board, Constance Proctor, Regent Ark Chin, Regent Mari Clack, Regent Daniel Evans, Regent Gerald Greenstein, our student regent, Regent Christopher Knaus, Regent Shelley Yap, and Regent Cindy Zender. Ladies and gentlemen, the regents of the University of Washington. At the heart of any university is its faculty. Here, representing the faculty at large, is the chair of the Faculty Senate, Professor Jerry Phillipson. We have a number of vice presidents and administrative representatives with us this morning. They include Ernest Morris, the Vice President for Student Affairs, David Thorud, the Acting Vice President for University Relations and Dean of the College of Forest Resources, Christine Hughes, Chief of the Attorney General's Division, Harlan Patterson, Vice Provost for Planning and Budgeting, Deborah Friedman, Associate Provost for Academic Planning, Carol Nichols, Executive Assistant to the President. Our university is organized into schools and colleges, and we have here this morning a number of deans and their representatives. Let me introduce them in the chronological order in which those schools and colleges were established. First, David Hodge, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Dean Alan Glenn, College of Education. Sidney Nelson, Dean of the School of Pharmacy. Roland Hjorth, Dean of the School of Law. Yash Gupta, Dean of the School of Business. Denise Denton, Dean of the College of Engineering. Pam Mitchell, Associate Dean of the School of Nursing. Daniel Hunt, Associate Dean of the School of Medicine. Katrina Dinas, Associate Dean of the College of Architecture and Urban Planning. Margaret Spearman, Associate Dean of the School of Social Work. Patricia Wall, Dean of the School of Public Health and Community Medicine. Arthur Noel, Dean of the College of Ocean and Fishery Sciences. Warren Buck, Chancellor and Dean of UW-Bothell. And Frederick Campbell, Dean of Undergraduate Education. Welcome our deans. We have three individuals who will address you this morning. They include Colleen McElroy, Professor of English and Creative Writing, Ryan Biava, President of the ASUW, and Heidi Lee, Mary Gates Endowment Undergraduate Student Research Training Grant recipient. The University of Washington is especially proud and grateful for the outstanding teaching that occurs here. And each year we make special awards to those who have distinguished themselves in teaching. For faculty, these awards are called the Distinguished Teaching Awards. We have three of those recipients with us this morning. Anthony Gill, Assistant Professor of Political Science, Rasat Kasaba, Professor of International Studies, and June Morita, Senior Lecturer of Management Science and Statistics. Many of our graduate students have teaching responsibilities, and the university recognizes those who have made unusual contributions with the Excellence in Teaching Awards. One such awardee is with us this morning, Pamela Ralston from the Comparative Literature Program. Pamela? We also recognize students who have an exceptional record. One such student, a recipient of what's called the Faculty Medal, faculty medalist Russell McDonald, freshman medalist for 1999, is with us as well. Someday, sooner than you think, you will be alumni of this university. You'll have a chance to join in a particularly outstanding alumni organization, the UW Alumni Association, and its president, Jeffrey Vernon, is with us this morning. Jeff? I'd also like to acknowledge a number of individuals serving as marshals of this ceremony this morning. You've met Ronald Moore, University Marshal. He's an associate professor of philosophy. I'd like to also introduce the President's Party Marshal, Norman Arkins. He's an associate vice president and executive director for university relations. The Dean's Party Marshal, which is Sandra Madrid, assistant dean in the School of Law. The Chief Convocation Marshal, Stephen Olswang, who's vice provost. And several Convocation Marshals, Emil Petrie, Michael Peterson, Renee Singleton, Pierre Hart, Millie Russell, and Maggie Olona. Let's thank the marshals for this ceremony. And finally, I certainly want to recognize Timothy Saltzman and the University Wind Ensemble. Thank you. Also, we're very fortunate to have with us sign language interpreters Janelle Dover, and Beth Schoenberg. Thank you. The University of Washington is fortunate to have a very effective student organization, one that serves both the interests of students and provides a mechanism for student participation of the leadership of the university. The president of the Associated Students of the University of Washington is Mr. Ryan Biava, and he's with us here this morning. Ryan's home is in Seattle. He's a senior majoring in political science. He's a very strong student and a terrific student leader. Please welcome Ryan Biava.
Thank you, Provost Huntsman. First, of course, I'd like to welcome all the new students to campus this afternoon. And I can't help but remember my first few weeks here at the University of Washington myself. It was a bit overwhelming, as I'm sure many of you are feeling, looking forward to this coming week. But I soon, after looking at the number of classes to choose from and the number of different people walking around, I soon came to 3 realizations during those first 2 weeks, and I'd like to share them with you today. Now, I've always had a love for politics and government and law, so political science would seem natural for me to put down roots academically once I got here. But as I hope you'll notice too as you start taking classes, once you get into it, you notice that you ask yourself questions about how your ideas and interests more globally fit into the academic and world picture. Instead of, for me, instead of asking simply how a certain political decision affected my life, I thought about how it affected people around the world. Or instead of wondering about not only just the politics, but the science behind world problems as well. And all of these questions really got me thinking about new ideas, and I wondered how it would be that I could find answers to all of the varying questions from disciplines ranging from liberal arts to science to architecture and back again. And that's when the realizations began. First, I realized that for any question I wanted an answer to, there was someone on this campus whose office is likely within a few hundred yards of where we're sitting right now, who not only knows the answer, but has contributed to exactly what we know about the world. Through their study and research, both before and after they arrived at UW, they have taken in the vast amounts of knowledge that their field possesses, and they are the next link in the chain from one generation of scholars to the next. And starting today, every one of you has the potential to join in on that process. And the second realization, which that brings me to, which happened when I picked up a textbook in one of the first classes I was in, and I thought about the hundreds and hundreds of people who have contributed to that part of learning and to have played a part in bringing that textbook to me throughout the generations so I could have that textbook in my hand in a very concise and accessible format. So when you turn the first few pages in your classes this week, I hope you'll take a second to realize that you're not just reading some assignment, some piece of material your professor has required you to read. Instead, you're holding much of what makes us as humans human, the quest for understanding. And so the third realization happened when I finally figured out that along with my education came a responsibility to my community. It is a wonderful gift to receive an education. So I'd like to ask you all, now that you've become the next participants in that process, the following question. What will you do with your education? How will you use it to improve your life and the lives of those in your community? Our world faces many challenges, as we all know. Which projects will you choose to make a difference in? Will your community benefit from all that it has invested in you? We all have many questions facing us in the years ahead, and as you start to work on answering those questions for yourselves, I personally hope that you will challenge yourself to reevaluate your beliefs about the world and how it works. Use these coming years as a chance to make changes in the parts of your life that you have previously not been able to. There are literally hundreds of student groups on this campus, and we at the ASUW are ready to help you navigate through your time here while you continue on in your education. To start carving out a place for you on this campus, all you have to do is walk into the hub and walk to the second floor. And the outstanding group of students that I work with and myself will do our best to point you in the right direction. So finally, I invite you all to take very seriously your time here. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times to have fun and to really take advantages of the opportunities on our campus and in this great city. But ask your professors those tough questions. Don't be afraid to take a class that isn't exactly in your major, but that interests you, even if you don't know why. But most of all, remember why you are here and why your guests have come with you here today. They and the student government that I represent here today want you to succeed and to share in the astounding amount of knowledge and opportunity on our campus. I hope you'll take the support of your family and friends and of the ASUW and use it to begin to stretch your experience and understanding of the world around you. So again, welcome, and I wish each of you a wonderful and productive year. Best of luck.
Universities are about learning. Learning what others know, learning what nobody knows. One of the distinguishing characteristics of coming to study at a place like the University of Washington is the opportunity it presents to students to be engaged in the discovery part of learning. We're very proud of the expanding opportunities we are providing for what we term experiential learning, opportunities for students to be engaged in both research and service projects. We've asked Heidi Lee to come and tell you a bit about her experience at the University of Washington in this regard. Young Heidi Lee was born and raised in Seoul, Korea. Came to the United States at age 12, attended middle and high schools in Van Nuys, California, and she came to the University of Washington in the fall of '95. She has just finished her double bachelor's degrees in comparative literature and music this last June. During her undergraduate studies, she participated in a research project with Richard Will, professor of music history, on the topic of 18th century programmatic symphonies and their cultural meanings. As a result of this, she received the Mary Gates Endowment Undergraduate Student Research Training Grant, one of a number that are made possible by the remarkable endowment that honors Mary Gates, former regent of the University of Washington. Last May, Heidi presented her research paper entitled Representation of China in European Musical Compositions of the 18th and 19th Centuries. She did so at the annual UW Undergraduate Research Symposium, a remarkable event. If you ever have a chance to be part of it, please do so. This fall, Heidi will begin her master's program in music history here at the University of Washington. We ask Heidi now to come and tell you a bit about her experience as an undergraduate engaged in research at the University of Washington.
Four years ago, on this very same Sunday, I was sitting here just like all of you at my freshman convocation, anticipating what it might be like tomorrow when the first day of my college life begins. My immediate impression was that everything on this campus seemed too huge and too far. I remember walking into a 700-person lecture class in Kane Hall for the first time. That made me feel like being in a baseball stadium with the professor lecturing instead of a player batting. Although it was a very engaging class, I regret that I did not get to know my professor and participate in a more interactive learning environment. Like many undergraduate students, I came to the university not really knowing which field of study I wanted to pursue. It was not until I took my first music class from Richard Will, professor of music history, that I realized my strong interest in interdisciplinary studies in music and comparative literature. His classes always challenged my critical thinking and encouraged me to explore my interests in greater depth. One day I approached Professor Will seeking an opportunity for research. He was enthusiastic about the idea and suggested a project related to his forthcoming book on very little-known symphonies of the 18th and early 19th centuries. One of the most fascinating aspects of my research was the opportunities to study symphonies that previously had not been studied by anyone. Doing research was the most rewarding experience of my undergraduate studies because I was able to explore a topic of my interest that is not taught in regular courses, and I had the chance to study individually under the guidance of a professor who is an expert in this field. Instead of sitting in lecture, I met weekly with Professor Will to discuss the research and explore new techniques and resources. Contributing to new knowledge in the field was highly stimulating and challenging. Another benefit of participating in research was that it enhanced my preparation for graduate studies. The valuable tools of music research I have gained have given me a head start even before I begin my new academic journey as a graduate student tomorrow. Some of you might be wondering how you can engage in research with faculty. 2 significant events helped me to realize this goal. First was meeting a professor whose enthusiasm for his research and teaching was always visible. He never hesitated to devote his time and energy to teaching me different aspects of research. Second was gaining the financial support of a Mary Gates Endowment for Students Research Training Grant. This grant was very valuable as it enabled me to dedicate myself entirely to the research project rather than working at a part-time job to help pay for college. This experience truly made my undergraduate education much more personal, exciting, fulfilling, and now looking back, very memorable. So I would like to recommend to all of you to start thinking early about these wonderful opportunities on this campus. You will soon find out, even on the first day, that there is an astonishing amount of activities and resources from which you can benefit. You may wonder, as I did, whether 4 years will really be long enough to experience all that is available here at the University of Washington. Thank you.
Convocation speaker this year is Professor Colleen McElroy. Professor McElroy did her undergraduate and master's level education at Kansas State University, and then came here to the University of Washington and did a PhD in ethnolinguistics, which is the study of culture and language. We recruited her to stay here, and she has taught at the UW for 27 years. Officially, she is a professor of English and creative writing. Her career path is not so simply described, however. Her strong interest in language, including storytelling, has led her to a number of endeavors. She has been a talk show moderator, a speech pathologist, and eventually she became a writer. And she has traveled extensively across the world to study oral traditions in other countries, places like Madagascar, Tibet, Mexico, and Central America. She's been widely recognized and given many awards for her accomplishments. She's authored a number of articles, books, poems, and screenplays. She's received such distinguished awards as 2 Fulbright Creative Writing Awards, the National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship, and she's currently working on a novel about segregation and power, and it's set in Germany in the aftermath of World War II. Please join me in welcoming Professor Colleen McElroy.
I couldn't resist doing that. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Good morning to the regents, provost huntsman, members of the faculty, families, and students, and especially to you, the last freshman class to enter the University of Washington in the 20th century. You are a very special class, and I offer you my congratulations. How fortunate I am to be addressing you, not only because you are entering this outstanding institution at the end of a remarkable century, but because you are the best and the brightest. You have distinguished yourselves through your achievements and academic credentials, and you bring with you varied experiences and cultural backgrounds that will help you thrive during your years at the university. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the academic world. Without too much of a stretch of the imagination, I can remember the year I entered the university community. Although the circumstances were somewhat different, I can still conjure up my anticipation, probably similar to what you are feeling now, the expectation that the world would be new and exciting. My journey took me far away from home to Munich, Germany. I disembarked from the ship in Bremerhaven with as much sophistication as I could muster. That is, very, very little. But it was enough to see me through that year of transition. My first weeks in Germany were filled with the swell of noise that rose and fell like the movements of the ocean. The air was a mixture of the last breath of summer with just a hint of fall, all of it tempered by half a dozen languages swirling around me like leaves, the glitter and sparkle of unfamiliar words, curlicues and inflections of French, German, Turkish, Greek, and a symphony of other languages. I plunged into this wealth of new sounds with very little notion of what was expected of me, a black girl in a very white world, wide-eyed and trying to look cool, equipped with a Missouri accent and a pocketful of textbook phrases. The year I arrived in Germany, the Berlin Wall had not yet been constructed, but rumors of trouble at the border filled the air, and newsmen had recently coined the term Iron Curtain. Some streets only contained the rubble of houses as post-war reconstruction spread across German cities. And it was still more common to see German men wearing the traditional leather shorts called lederhosen than to see them wearing business suits. All of these differences both excited and unnerved me. And for the first few weeks, nothing, not even the clothes my mother had helped me pack, seemed familiar. That was the challenge, to redefine time and place, to change the language I used and develop skills I had not yet formed. As the historian Henry Brooks Adams said, "They know enough who know how to learn." That perhaps is what I came to terms with in my first year, a sense of how to learn. Certainly, I believe my experiences as a university freshman helped me develop what is called discipline, a trait I had skillfully managed to sidestep up to that point. I have to confess, high school had been a snap. I had joined every club available, the French club, the drama club, the citizenship club, the DJ club, activities I abandoned only when it was necessary to cram for a test. But I had one redeeming habit. I was one of those students who loved to read the dictionary just for the pleasure of discovering new words, many of which I'm sure I misused once I'd made their acquaintance. I had an ear for language, and though I certainly didn't know it at the time, that talent would serve me well years later when I became first a speech pathologist and then a poet. But in Germany, in my freshman year of university life, I was more concerned with dropping my Midwestern accent so that Dankeschön and Auf Wiedersehen didn't sound like Dankeschön and Auf Wiedersehen. The going was tough at first, but I made friends and I observed and listened. Listening was a trait my mother had instilled in me. My mother had studied Shakespeare and never lost her fondness for him. No question was too insignificant to draw a quote from her. When a package arrived in the mail, I'd ask, "What is this?" And she'd alter Shakespeare to respond, "What is this I see before me? Its handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee." As a youngster, I believed there might be something dangerous inside any package wrapped to conceal its contents. "Can I go out?" I'd say. And she'd respond, "Out, out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow." Of course, I could have done with a yes or no. And if it wasn't enough to be assaulted with Shakespeare while in elementary school, my listening was honed by eavesdropping on the gossip of my mother and her sisters. Every week, my mother's sisters would gather at my grandmother's house on Kennerly Avenue in St. Louis and dissect the world along the lines of love and war, birth and death, loyalty and treachery, and above all, black and white. I would take my place under the dining room table or by the pot-bellied stove or in the corner by the window next to my grandmother, Annabelle Long, or Mama, as all of us called her. These women had a keen sense of description, painterly language, as I tell my students now. They were masters of metaphor and could talk about someone without ever resorting to base language. But it was Mama who let me ask all sorts of questions. I remember asking, what if pigs could really fly? One day after I'd overheard them discussing what would have to happen before a neighbor woman changed her behavior. The women laughed, but without skipping a beat, my grandmother said, they'd be so big they'd cut up the air with the noise they made. I suppose that's where my love of painterly language began, listening to the women in my family tell stories. And although I may not have understood everything that was said, I learned to pay very close attention so that I could recount the story myself later on. That practice came in handy when I had to take notes on lectures and later decipher the scrawls I'd left in my notebook. At first, the lectures flooded my ears with words jammed together in a kind of static that made no sense to me at all. And those were the lectures in English. By the time I'd lived through several lectures in German, I was ready to bail out and head back for the States. I was in awe that so much could be said and that the saying could take up so much time. In those days, an hour earned every excruciatingly slow second of its 60 minutes, especially when I was in class. And most of my time was spent in class or sleeping. I went to class, ate in the dining hall, went back to the dorm. That was my routine. I didn't vary it for fear of losing my grip altogether. After all, I was 18 and in college. So much was expected of me. I was in danger of becoming one of those students who the poet Billy Collins describes as having their grades sewn into their clothes like references to Hawthorne. The more frustrated I became, the longer that hour grew. Sometimes I felt as if I'd been trapped in that classroom for days instead of minutes. As clear as I can recall, I expected every lecture to reach me intact, like a TV dinner, or those trays of mystery food they serve on airplanes. I believed that all I had to do was fill pages with notes, then later turn the pages as if I were peeling back saran wrap or tin foil, and without much effort from me, it would all be there. One group of scribblings for chemistry, another for history, another for composition. As a result, my doodles were more intelligible than my lecture notes. I needed to loosen up big time. So I joined a study group of students who, like me, did not have German as their first language. Only now do I understand that we didn't have English literature or mathematics or Greek philosophy as our first languages either. But at the time, I thought I was the odd one out. Then, wonder of wonders, there were others who were also floundering on the shores of learning. We sort of mooshed together in one great lump, barely able to confess our shortcomings. Bit by bit, we picked our way toward some level of understanding. It was to be the most intense learning experience I had that first year. Not because any of us knew more than the professors, but because we were all searching our way through the world of books and notes and subjects spoken in a language unique to itself. My earlier habit of browsing the dictionary paid off. I could compare the root of one word to that of another. And that's how we took it, one word at a time, stumbling through as if we were learning each subject by Braille. We discussed, rehashed, dissected, marveled at our discoveries, and laughed at our foibles. We learned to ask, what if, in as many different ways as possible. And sometimes I had the answers. When I understood any one part of a lecture, I felt older, more mature, more of a real student rather than a body straight out of high school and put there only to warm the seat. And when I was able to hold my own through a discussion on logic or history given in German, hey, I felt not only older, but much, much wiser. I think that what happened was not so much what we learned, but how we learned to trust our instincts. In those brainstorming sessions, we questioned both the unknown and the commonplace, not just the what if, but the who, where, and why of any idea. We were like jazz musicians improvising on classical rhythms to find our own tunes. But please don't get me wrong. I didn't have a clue that such deep-seated learning was going on. No, those study sessions were simply a way of getting together with friends. Yet something happened, however much by osmosis. In a few weeks, I found myself not only taking notes, but also making comments in the margins, sometimes just a simple question mark or exclamation point to underscore a thought, and other times a phrase at the edge of the page to remind me to check a reference or find an origin, and all of it ammunition for after-class discussions. Who was there to tell me that was the real way to study when all I was doing was socializing? If the truth be known, I think I was more concerned with looking bad in front of my friends than the professors. Still, the end results were the same. And the marvel was that I found myself thinking about class when I was outside of class. Historian Thomas Carlyle said the true university of these days is a collection of books. Of course, Carlyle didn't have Microsoft in his backyard, but the notion hasn't much changed. The university truly holds the tools of learning, from books to computers to labs and practice rooms. Most importantly, those tools are made special by the excellent faculty brought in to teach. Among the host of distinguished teachers and scholars, the University of Washington offers you an exemplary faculty that includes Nobel Prize winners, Rockefeller and Ford Foundation winners, National Academy of Science and National Academy of Engineering recipients, Guggenheim, Fulbright, and MacArthur Fellows, just to name a few of the honors held. Your learning will begin in their classrooms. At the same time, however, it is important to remember that learning takes place not only in the classroom, but in many settings. Education should not be confined to an island where, cut off from the world, you are prepared for life by exclusion from it. In order to learn, you need to have a hunger which searches for knowledge all around you. In Germany, I was fortunate to have found a study group that helped me focus when I was on campus, but also took me off campus. Our favorite places were outdoor cafes and pubs, places where we could loudly declare our genius before we'd return to class where professors would put us to the test. Similarly, the University of Washington is surrounded by a city resplendent in history. Learn the uniqueness of this city, a place where the term skid road was coined as the path taken by logs skidding down to ships waiting in the harbor. Observe the geography of place, a city framed by mountains and water. The writer Murray Morgan describes Seattle as a city where hills are so steep even the sidewalks have cleats. This is a city of invention and inventiveness. Not only the technology of Microsoft and Boeing, but the arts typified by Benaroya Concert Hall, the Seattle Art Museum, Seattle Repertory Theater, the Richard Hugo Literary Center, the Seattle International Film Festival, and the First Thursday Gallery Walks in Pioneer Square. Don't be a stranger to that setting. To know how to learn, to ask the right questions, the what if, even if it's no more than what if pigs could fly. That will be your goal for this, your first year at the university. I suppose part of me may always be a freshman, wide-eyed and trying to look cool. In a poem where I write about being a first-year student, I've taken the liberty of combining Robert Frost's line, "Whose woods these are, I think I know," with the fairy tale image of going alone into the woods because, at first, the campus may seem like a forest of buildings. My poem, titled Froschkinder, reads like this. What to say about going into the woods, your sack filled with books without maps? What's to hold you back except the sound you can't quite place, although it seems to sing a slightly familiar tune? Who's to say what to erase and what to highlight when everything seems important and every note a portent of your next false step? Hey, you know these woods. You've deconstructed every tree in last year's high school lab when you partnered with the smartest boy in class and you knew all the answers. You've taken apart the crinoline of fairy tales and loose-leaf primers. So what is there left to do but blaze a new trail? And when you reach a fork in the road, try every trick. Count to 10 and hold your breath. Recite the alphabet backwards. Find the root of all the 7-syllable words you know. Now go ahead, raise your hand, raise hell, let them know what you have to say. This year will constitute your rite of passage, your chance to take hold of all the resources available to you at the University of Washington. It's going to be a busy year. Meet it head on, network, ask questions, and let them hear what you have to say. Thank you, and have a great year.
Thank you so much, Professor McElroy, for an eloquent, wise, and thoroughly wonderful speech. I'd like to close with a few words of thanks. First, to Timothy Saltzman and the University Wind Ensemble, thank you for the outstanding music. To you parents and relatives, thank you for the courage and the commitment you've embodied as you've sent these young men and women to us to begin their adventure of learning at the university. To all of you who are coming to us as freshmen, thank you for choosing the University of Washington. We wish you great success and much satisfaction. And to all of you who have joined us in this wonderful ceremony today, thank you for coming. Now, Marshall Moore will come and close this ceremony.
The University Alumni Association invites parents, students, and other guests to enjoy complimentary refreshments in the lobbies of Meany and Kane halls. The audience is requested to remain seated until the completion of the recession by the platform party. The 1999 Freshman Convocation of the University of Washington is now closed.